okay. When I'd finished my canvas, I did have a few leftover hexagons. So today I'm just going to have a little play with those. These are the ones that are left over. And what I'm going to start with is on the reverse of 4, using a reusable tape, but really any single-sided tape, stuck them together to form my first base sheet, which I'm now about to slop gesso all over, which hopefully won't take too long. I got a very old tub of artist's gesso that I've been using for years and years and years, and there is still quite a bit left in the bottom of it, so I suspect I'll be using it for a few more years yet, which is nice. Oh, I don't want it to fall over all over the place. Right, let's slop lots and lots of gesso all over this. It does look like this brush has been used previously with some brushers, but that's fine, because I'm sure the white will knock back that little bit of colour. I do take it straight from the pot, and I am not a clean and tidy, neat and tidy crafter. To me, it's the rough finish, the rough edge, that makes the piece. I'm not neat and tidy. In fact, I don't like neat and tidy, but don't tell anybody. Well, that's a very silly thing to say, but hey ho, I'm just trying to fill the space while I use lots of white gesso on these, which will then set aside to dry, but hopefully it'll dry fairly quickly. If not, I might give it a quick blast, because I don't think you really want to sit around and watch paint dry. I could be wrong. That might be the most exciting thing in your life, but I suspect it isn't. But we'll just ram a coat of gesso on all of these. Gesso was a product developed originally for acrylic artists to help seal their canvases, because as we all know, anything that's even slightly porous will absorb anything that's even slightly fluid. So I'm not quite sure what they used to use when it was just oil paints, or before we had all these wonderful plastic products, but now we have all these wonderful plastic nylon products, even if we don't like them anymore because they're not environmentally friendly. It does make life easier. I'm doing it again, aren't I? I'm not showing you on the screen. I will learn, but as you can see, it's another bright sunny day and I can't see all that well. However, gesso, it's been adopted by those of us in the mixed media crafting world because it seals, and that's why with something like this, it's usually a good idea to get a coat of gesso on the surface. The only time I wouldn't bother was if I was going to stick paper over the top, because you know what, the paper will seal it all by itself, as will the glue, and so you don't need a gesso surface. But as I tend not to be someone who sticks paper all over the top, even if I've got absolutely no idea what I'm going to do with these, I do tend to give it a gesso base. So you can get all sorts of gesso. Some of the crafters ones are a lot thinner. I prefer the artist ones because they are thicker, they do last well, and they do give one coat coverage, and a good one coat coverage, which is very important. They also dry just as quickly as any other sort, which is also helpful. Sorry, there are rather a lot of these. What I'm thinking of doing with this, which I'll waffle on while I'm doing this, is another wall hanging that is just based around the hexagons. I'm not planning on attaching them to anything this time, just attaching them to each other. That might not work out, and I might feel that I've got to put something behind them to secure them, and that something behind them to secure them might become something that's visible. But that's not really what's in my mind at the moment. What's in my mind at the moment is lots and lots of hexagons stuck together, probably in layers, because these invite layering. The different sizes and shapes and the opportunities you get with just putting things at angles to each other. It's just so tempting. You've got to do it. We're nearly done now, just one more piece to do. after this one, and then we'll have everything prepped. As I say, I might end up giving it all a blast with the heat gun. I'll have a quick look in a minute and see how dry we think it is. Don't normally blast with heat guns. One thing is it actually drives the product into the surface, which, as this is gesto and I want it to seal the surface, is not necessarily a bad thing. And two, I find it tends to dull the colours a bit. I think if you dry something with a heat gun, it's not so good with the various effects or the colours that you're trying for. I just prefer letting things dry in the sunshine. Right, I'm going to leave you staring at those because they all look wonderful. They've all been painted. Well, they've all been covered with gesso. And I'm quickly going to go and get a jug of water to put my brush in, because I didn't think about that, did I? Bear with. That's really when you could have used a musical interlude, but I didn't have one. See, that's touch dry. That'll do. Let's play. I have some rubber stamps. Well, they're not rubber, they're acrylic stamps. They came from a magazine, a very recent magazine, and they're plant life. So have a look and see how many of these might fit on there. And start to use that as the next stage. We can have pots of those. Pots of those. What else do we have? Oh, we have those. And there's a sentiment on here that I absolutely love. There's a couple on here I absolutely love. I thought those ones said sending you a prickly hug. It's not a very big one, so we'll use the other one, which is going to need cutting off. What that one says is, as I turn it over, life is like a cactus, prickly but beautiful. Now, I quite like that as my main sentiment, so those are going to be my main stamped images. And then when we're done, we'll have other little bits and pieces coming off here. We might even have more stamped images, I don't know yet. So, ink, I'm going to use a black Memento ink because I'll probably use a solvent pen on these. And solvent pens definitely work best with Memento. So that's the ink I'm about to use. I have an acrylic block, which I'm sure most of us have got. Lots and lots and lots of light tapping, which I'm sure most of us, if not all of us, know about. Aiming for a good coverage. And of course, all the time I'm doing this, just so it's getting drier. So there is image number 1 going on. The very first time any of these have ever been inked. So, oh, you know what? Sometimes these magazine stamps prove to be better quality than some you pay quite a bit of money for. And I'd say that was one of those. Lots and lots more light stamping. Do not get ink on there. Blast. Never mind, we'll cover that. We'll find a way of getting around that. I must clean these in a minute, but for expediency and the fact that I'm sharing all of this with you on a video, and I'm absolutely convinced you don't need to see me cleaning stamps. Whatever else you might feel the need for, you don't need to see me cleaning stamps, do you? Just as you don't need to see me or see paint dry. Right, let's just get rid of that. Let's pop that on there. And then we've just got one more little one to go. Perhaps a bit too much pressure, but hey ho. Last one for these, and then we'll do a little bit of colouring on this. I have two types of solvent pens. I have chameleon, or chameleon, however it's pronounced. It's a CH word, very confusing. And of course I have pro markers. Pro markers are the ones I started with, but I subsequently discovered the other ones, and what I like about them is the fact that you can actually fade your colour more. Not something you can't do so much of here with this. So I'm going to grab those. I'm afraid you're probably going to get quite a bit of arm reaching because I've had to put them over there. Let's take a green one. That's a grey one. Right, this is one of the pens. In this section is blending solution or solvent. There are two different types of nibs. So you have a brush nib at this end, and you have the round bullet nib at this end. And if you're going to want to use the blending facility, you take both parts, put them together like that, hold them upright, for a count of around about 10, depending on how faded you want it to be. Take the top off, I'll put it back on there for the minute, and then as you colour, the colour develops. So what started as being quite pale gradually gets darker and darker until all the solvent part has been pushed through and it's just the original colour coming through. Doesn't show up that well on this, so I'll stick with just doing them as regular pens because these are small images. But that's what I like about these pens. You can actually fade. In fact, you can even buy a set of coloured tops so you can mix two colours together and get a different effect altogether, which is fantastic. Where else might I want that green? That's usually a darker, glossier green. Yeah, perhaps we'll put a little bit on this side as well. Not a lot, just a bit. Just merrily colour away. There's so many different ways that you can colour things these days. It's absolutely wonderful, the different mediums you can get and play with. Spend hours. In fact, that's what I have been doing this morning before I started this. Just mucking around with different mediums. We are very, very lucky. The manufacturers must absolutely love us. Right, I want a little bit of... Sorry about this pink. Well, I think I need a little bit of coral red one. I'm putting down here. Because this reminds me of that cactus you see that's usually got bits of pink in it. So that's what I'm going for with that. Give it a moment. And then we'll add some yellows. Because the other thing is this, we're using artistic license. I'm using the brush end on these. There you go. And there are a few bits of yellow around here just to finish our cactus off. Now, as that is in one of those glass terrarium things, it would have different colours, so it's going to have a different green. It's going to have a cinnamon colour, and then it's going to have a nice tangerine colour for the top. So we'll start with a green down here for its base. We'll then give it the cinnamon. When you see these in the shops and places, they look really cool with all their different layers on them. I wanted to have the tangerine right at the very top, so I'm not sure for a second what I'm going to put in that other layer. Perhaps I'll put some more green in. And the tangerine decided to go there as well. Did it? Fine. Right, that'll do. That will do. And now I just want a very pale blue in a couple of places, as it's glass. So I'm going to use baby blue, and just round a couple of places like that. Or is that baby blue too pale? That baby blue might just be too pale. I might have to get something that's slightly more colourful. That's Lagoon, that's better. And you can actually see something of the blue for the glass like that, can't you? We'll put it in there, we'll put it around the rim. And that will do for that. You've now got the glass. Yes. That then is that one. I'm going to paint the edge in a minute. Not quite sure what I'm going to paint it yet. Right now I want a really dark green on that. Actually, it is that green, isn't it? That is the right green for these leaves. It's a cheese plant, this, isn't it? So it's not really a cactus, but they're great in offices, these. I think they're called cheese plants because of the holes. But if you go into an office that's brought in a whole load of plants, which they do to help with the air flow, and as decoration, and the companies that provide them probably make a killing. It's quite often a cheese plant because they'll grow quite tall, but they're quite good fun. Yes, it's a bit sloppy, but as I believe I have already mentioned, I'm not one for neat and tidy edges and that kind of tidiness. To me, it has too much of a manufactured effect. I rather that you see my mistakes than that I get really het up about them and discard something because I've made a slight mistake. Life is too short, and projects like this are too much fun to get wrapped up in that sort of detail. At least I think they are. Now, I know there are others who take a great deal of care and time and pay attention to detail, and there is nothing wrong with that. If you're a crafter like that, then that's absolutely fine. But if you're looking for a crafter like that, then please don't look at what I do, because you'll be very disappointed, especially as that colour just seems to be bleeding out now. I really am trying to be quite light-handed with it. Right, I'm going to stop when I've done this one, and we'll do some work to the other parts of the hexagons. and then I'll turn you off and just show you the finished piece when it is eventually done. But well, I'll show you a bit more of the idea about how I'm thinking about stacking them, but I'm not gluing anything in place until I've got this bottom layer done. And then who knows what'll go on there. Because that's the other fun with this sort of thing. I never know what's coming next. But I don't like to repeat myself, which is why you don't get a here's one I made earlier, and I'm now going to do this too. That would drive me twisted. Doing the same thing twice is my idea of boring. Right, there we have the pot. Now, a pot like that would have a really nice orange base. And then I think I'm going to have some really vivid red dripping down the sides. And yes, I do realise that my plant stems also need colouring. I'll use this one for that because it's less bushy. There they are. Right, what's the nicest red I've got? That one, I think. And I want a little bit of something for the soil. Right. Red first. I can't think of the manufacturer of pots that this reminds me of, but I definitely had a style in mind. And I've got the feeling it's continental. Because we Brits don't think of ourselves as continentals, do we? We don't acknowledge that actually we are part of Europe. Here we be. And just a little bit of this for the soil that's sitting in. There's another one done. As I say, I won't bore you when I do the rest. What I'll do is just think about now how I'm going to do the edges of those, and whilst you have a nice look at that and enjoy what I've done so far, I'll put my pens away, because it's something I do try to do, is keep my pens put away and keep neat and tidy. As far as my products are concerned, I do try to look after my stuff. I'm usually reasonably successful in doing so. Sometimes they do try and tell me they don't want to go away. Right, so that's just going to have a nice background. That one's going to be more interesting to put a background on. In fact, I might just leave part of that white rather than try and fiddle in between the stems and everything for that one. Yeah. Something else, I have a small collection of acrylic paints, and for these you do really need a palette. So what sort of backgrounds are we going to have? That one, I wonder, I think I'm going to give that one a reddish background, so we'll start with that. A lot of my brushes are on the sad side. However, they still pick up paint and spread it around, and that's really all we're concerned with. So these are the paints that I use quite a lot of. If I'm using an acrylic paint, I do quite often turn to these. I've got others, but I do like these. Just dip a bit into there. I've probably got too much, but I'm sure I'll find a way of using it up. Pop the top back on. And turn it around. And the fact that he's got a big black line going through him, it just isn't going to have to matter. Because I half suspect if I wasn't pointing out to you, you'd have forgotten all about it and wouldn't be seeing it anymore. One of the things that a painter decorator friend of mine once told me was if you're doing an edge, you're better off loading the brush with more paint than trying to do it thinly with very little paint. Basically, because you get to do it more or less in one go, and you're far less likely to go over the edge. So that's what I try and do now. Right, now the other thing I want to do is be very careful down here at the dividers, because I'm going to do different things in different places. A bit more. So yes, I'm being quite liberal, or quite generous perhaps I should say, with my paint here. But my little vase now really pops out. Don't know how well you're watching this. You know, if when you're watching these you fancy making a comment, I'd love to read it, or I'd love to hear it. So do feel free, because I promise you I'll know if somebody's commented, and I will go and have a look, and I might even respond. You never know your misfortunes. Oh, that works, doesn't it? That really just pops out and says, hi, I'm here. Take a look at me. Now this one, oh, I think that one wants a yellow. So, you didn't need to see me shake it, did you? This time, I've got this Hansa yellow. I've got no idea what the significance of the name Hansa is. Oh, perhaps I'll put some more in if I need it. My brush up from last time. And yes, I do know there is a golden rule that says you use lighter colours first and then go to the darker colours, and I've broken it. But that won't be for the first time, and at least in part it's because I haven't got a clue what I'm doing. So I'm making this up as I go along. And hoping it'll be alright on the night. So, you see, this is why it gets interesting when I'm doing something, because one, I don't like repeating myself at all. Two, I don't tend to come at this with a real plan in mind. In fact, this was just one of those occasions when I'd had to play with something else and I went, oh, I've still got those left over. Why don't I ever play with those? And then, well, whilst I don't ever play with those, why don't I share it with the rest of the world? Because I haven't got anything better to do. Don't let the cat hear me say that. He will explain to me that, yes, I have. I've got him. Right, keep going. Have you been watching the series? Have you been watching the Tuesdays where various members of the Tando team have been demonstrating things with the hexagons? There's so many things that you can do with them. With any of the Tando bits. It doesn't have to be hexagons. But they just lend themselves to all sorts of projects, these things. They are fantastic. I have been a fan of Tando for over 10 years. You see, I've got bits of pink coming through here because I didn't wash the brush completely clean. But that just adds to the interest, doesn't it? Right, nearly done. Yep, gone over in a couple of places. I care not. I am going to try and do a bit to the middle there because I think it will look better if it's popping out with the yellow in it. So I've just changed brush. As I say, it doesn't have to be perfect. Now the only other thing I'm going to do that I will share with you is what I decided I want to do with that, which is using different paints altogether, but they have a sparkly effect. So that's that. Just try and clean it up a little bit. As you can see, the paint goes very nicely over the top of the gesso and it doesn't react with the solvent pen. Always useful. Right, one baby wipe that's already coloured because it's picking up paint off my fingers. Oh, I just want to try and lift a little bit of paint off there. And a little bit of paint off there. Said before, baby wipes are absolutely wonderful. I don't know what babies think of them, but when I'm trying to do something like this, I'm totally enamoured. Just lift that up. And that's the other nice thing about acrylics, they dry quickly as well. So, perhaps they dry too quickly. My hands have got dry paint on them. Bear with me, I'm wandering off again. This time I want to get something different. What's that you say? How unusual is that? That's all unusual, is it? Right. What I'm going for this time is the Imagination Crafts Starlights, because I just think having something bright and cheerful like that will really just lift the words up without my having to do anything else to them. And I should have another flat brush somewhere. Well, I will have one somewhere, I've just got to find it. This one will do. This time I just use them straight from the pot. I don't pop them into the palette at all. They're not like the other acrylics. And this time we'll just go over here. So it's another medium again, really. Just over the top. I'm still trying to be careful that I don't go on to the next hexagon. So I just want this one to have the shimmer on it more than anything else. And once again we just go around the inks, which are not reacting with the paint. Oh whoopee. Well, they're not reacting unless I choose to paint over them. And this paint is really nice and thick and gloopy, which I like. It's because it's got all the mica in it, I suspect. Harley, no, this is not the time for you to try and drag me away. What Harley Cat does when he wants my attention is come and grabs hold of my sleeve and literally tries to pull me off. He is quite convinced that he is capable of moving me. And to a certain extent he's right, because he'll keep bothering me until I go. So this is going to work out at really good timing, because I can attend to his needs and leave you with the work I've done so far, and then I'll share with you later, just in a still photograph, how this all came together. Right, that's more or less all I'm doing to that. I might play with it a little bit more. And then my other thoughts are, let's get unnecessary bits out of the way. That there, or somewhere like that. That, somewhere like that, because it will help hide the fact that they're different sizes. Again, in a contrasting colour. Then we might have one of those sitting, say, in there with something else on it. One like that. Little one like that. And maybe I'm going to get that right. That on there with something else underneath it. Again, just perhaps a small leaf. And I might even put that underneath like that. So the arrangement will end up being something like that with other things stamped on and coloured on them. And it all just stuck together. And what I might have to do on the back of that is put some strong paper just cut to the shape to help hold it all in place. But I hope you've got another idea here of a few bits and pieces you could do with these hexagons. Thank you for watching.